Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Carole Baskin from Big Cat Rescue. And if I look tired, it's because I am. Things have just been going so fast here, and all of it is really, really good. But I'm just exhausted. And so I'm trying to catch up. I've been in DC lobbying for the Big Cat Public Safety Act for the past week. And of course, that means all of my thank yous have gotten behind for our donors over $500. I'm the person who sends them an email and makes a video for them and records it in our records and sends them a card. And so all of that has taken a huge amount of my time, because the end of the year is when everyone is so generous. So thank you very, very much. Don't let that hold up your checks. I really appreciate them coming in, and I'm happy to do those thank yous. It just has been kind of weird because we're moving so fast and so hard on the Big Cat Public Safety Act to try and get this passed this session. Congress is in a 2-year session, and last year, at the end of the 2-year session in December, we got the House to pass our bill with a 2/3 majority vote, but didn't have time to get it through the Senate. So we had to start all over in January of 2021. And we currently have something like 255 co-sponsors in the House, I think, which is way more than a majority. And we're working on getting Senate co-sponsors. So I just met with Marty Irby and Wayne Pacelli from Animal Wellness Action, and they set up something like 46 meetings with members of Congress. And I think like 2/3 of the meetings that I had were actually members of Congress, which they would never see me before. Well, I shouldn't say never, but it was really hard to get a meeting with a member of Congress before. But now this bill really has legs, and they were happy to talk to us. And then most of them had a huge amount of their staff in the room, which was really nice. And then in the places where the member had to be off voting or was too tied up with other things and couldn't be there, then I met with just the staff who really get things done in DC. So it was a great, great time. And one of the things I wanted to tell you guys, and why I'm so excited and wanted to make sure I did this Big Cat briefing, is because, did I say, hey, all you cool cats and kittens at the beginning? I'm so tired. I don't know if I even started this out right, but I was so happy when I went from office to office to office, because everybody said how many calls and emails they are getting from all of you, and even in-visit meetings from you, coming and telling them that you want us to pass the Big Cat Public Safety Act. And so thank you if you've been taking action at bigcatact.com. It's paying off. Some of the people said it's the bill that gets the most attention in DC as far as the most people caring about it and writing in and calling in, which is really important, is making those calls. And so that just, I can't tell you how much that warmed my heart. I was so excited to hear that. And of course, people in Congress, they're elected by you. They want to do what makes you happy. And so hearing from you is so important. You know, last year there was some bad messaging going around because there was just 2 members of Congress, who shall not be named, who were, I think, unduly influenced by Frank Vitello, who is a lobbyist who had worked for Doc Antle and for Mario Tabro. I've heard that they've paid him as much as $60,000 to represent the cub petting industry, which is actually just pretty much Doc and Mario. There's a couple other people that do cub petting now, but they don't do it with anywhere near the volume that they do in South Carolina at Tigers, and in South Florida, Miami Homestead with the Zoological Wildlife Foundation. And so he was going around telling people that it was going to cause overlap between USDA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that it was a states' rights issue and shouldn't be something that Congress gets involved in. And the things that he was saying are things that we could prove were not true. But unfortunately, when somebody has influence like that, then it's very hard to overcome it and say, look, just read the bill. Just read this really short bill, this short bill language that'll show you you're being lied to, and then try to get them to co-sponsor the bill. So that's why I was there, to just take all the wind out of their blustery, lying sails and finally show the truth to the members of Congress and their staff. And so that was really, really helpful for all of you to be reaching in and calling in and backing up that bill. And so I started to say that there was really, I'm sorry, I'm so tired. There was some bad messaging done by these people to try and throw the bill off track before the Senate could pass it last year. And what they were saying is, Americans are dying from COVID, and here you are voting on, or thinking about voting on, a Tiger King and marijuana package. Well, it wasn't a package, and it wasn't Tiger King that made any of this happen. And I don't even care how you feel about the marijuana issue. I don't have a dog in that fight. It's a horrible analogy, but just the bad messaging was enough to keep it from being heard. And so just one person can really mess things up. And that's why it's so important that you get out there and make yourselves heard. I talked to one member of Congress, one of their staff, and they were saying that she won by 6 votes. That's how much your voice can make a difference in things. So please always speak up for the cats. And some of the people were saying that they voted no, because even though we won by a 2/3 majority vote in the House last year, there were still some people that voted no. And they said that they heard from you and that you said, what were you thinking? You need to vote for the Big Cat Public Safety Act. We want that to pass. And so they were saying that even though they voted no last time, they're going to vote yes this time, which makes me believe we have and it's the exact same bill. So it makes me believe we have a much stronger chance of getting this passed in this upcoming year. And this upcoming year, 2022, it's the year of the tiger. How cool is that? Oh my goodness, that's so cool. We are going to pass this in the year of the tiger. So Deb was telling me that a lot of you still didn't know that we have put the carp in the lake. So for those of you who have been watching us, you know that we have this horrible problem with hydrilla. It's an invasive weed that gets into lakes, and it just takes over the whole lake, and it sucks all the oxygen out of the lake, and then all of the wildlife start dying, all of the fish and turtles and everybody who lives in there. And so we had to do something about it. We had been spending an enormous amount of money and time and effort with all kinds of granules and sprays and everything, and it all had to be like eco-friendly so that it didn't poison our tigers, and it just was not having the effect that it should have. And so we had petitioned the Florida Wildlife Commission to let us have some grass carp. It's a special kind of carp. It's also an invasive species, and that's why you have to go through this obnoxious permitting process to get it. And the only carp you can put in a lake or anywhere, the only kind of grass carp that you can put in any kind of waterway has to be sterilized first, which makes it ridiculously expensive. And apparently the only place you can get these is like in Arkansas, and they can't ship them when it's hot. So we had gone through the permitting process. We had arranged to buy 200 carp, which is all the state would let us have. And the person that we're getting them from had to ship them in from Arkansas, maybe Arizona, I forget, one of those A states. And so he recommended that we put half in now and half in like February, March, I think. And so I don't know why, but he's the expert. So we put the first half in, and hopefully they are out there doing their job. It looks better already, but part of that is just because it's colder. And when it's colder, that weed sinks below the surface a little bit. So when you see aerial footage, you'll be like, oh my gosh, this carp did an amazing job in just the few weeks that they've been here. No, not quite. But it really is nice to see it looking better. I'm really happy about that. And hopefully this will give the carp some time to grow up and eat all of that food. So let me think, was there anything else? I think I'm going to do some big cat news, because boy, has there been a ton of news, and so much of it is really good news. So, well, good news in that people are actually enforcing the law when people are breaking the law about big cats. So hawk-snab duo in Zerust in possession of a lion's head. Glad they got caught. Beth Pratt raised millions of dollars in California for a cougar overpass so that those cougars can get across the interstate. Some mountain lion kittens were found under a picnic table in California, and of course everybody is all over me wanting me to rescue those kittens, but I can assure you there are plenty of sanctuaries that are accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries that will have already reached out to take those kittens in. Iowa DNR, deer hunters find a dead mountain lion. That wasn't good news. This is a weird one. Hippos, hyenas, and other animals are contracting COVID-19. And it says more species are found to be susceptible to the coronavirus, with most cases detected in zoos. Well, that tells me that having zoos open to the public is causing a problem, because I have a hard time believing that they're all these different species are contracting it just from their keepers. The keepers love those animals, and it just, I would have to imagine that the zoos are doing the same thing that we are, as far as wanting their people to be vaccinated and making sure that they always wear their masks when they're around the animals, or when they're handling any of their food or anything that's going to go in their cage or in their mouth, that they're wearing gloves, that they're being very, very, even more sanitary than ever before. And yet, even with all of those precautions that we've taken here, we've actually had 2 cases of COVID that have been confirmed. And somebody was asking about that on Clubhouse the other day, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. So Amanda, even though she was euthanized because she was like 25 years old, 26 years old, I forget, and her kidneys had failed, when we sent in the test to the lab tests, we discovered that she had COVID. And we had her tested because she had been one of those people, that's how we think about them here. She had been one of those cats that had been kind of coughy and wheezy. And so we thought, well, we'll just on a lark do it. We had no idea that it would come back positive, and it came back positive after we had already euthanized her. And she had been coughing and wheezing for years prior to that. And we had treated it, but we always thought that it was more like an allergy or something. And so I don't know if she was just more susceptible to it because of the fact that she had that precondition, or what the situation was. And then Aria contracted COVID, and Aria and Amanda lived right next door to each other. So we treated Aria, and she recovered just fine. And so we did follow-up tests to make sure that she was COVID-free. So our vet had, at the time, he had thought that the COVID vaccines did not have enough, there had never been any kind of study for them in wild animals to know whether they were effective or could actually cause COVID in these animals. And because our population is so much older than most zoos or sanctuaries, he was really hesitant for us to vaccinate the cats. And because of the fact that Aria recovered so quickly, you could hardly ever tell that she was sick, we felt like it was safer to just make sure that our people were as safe as they could possibly be around these animals. And we've kept our gates closed so that we don't have a bunch of people coming in that could be bringing in COVID. We've done very small private tours, but those are keeping the people way away from the cats, nowhere near close enough to be able to breathe on them or cough on them or sneeze on them. So we're keeping a really close eye on all of the cats. And we just had a conference call with a bunch of zoos about COVID, and it happened while I was in DC. So I asked Erin to sit in on the call, and she took notes, and we'll be discussing that with our vet and see if there's any changes that we need to make going forward based on the new information that we have. I just got back, so we haven't had a chance to talk about this and see what we might decide to do in the future. So back to the news. The conservation game with Tiger King's Carole Baskin sells worldwide. So a lot of other countries are showing the conservation game. We are finding that it's really hard to get the outlets here in America to show it because so many of them have been complicit. So many of them have had these people like Jack Hanna and Dave Salmoni and Grant Kemmerer and Boone Smith and the Irwins and what's that other guy's name? Jeff Corwin, all of these people who take these baby wild animals onto TV shows And so since they've been involved in it, I think they don't want to talk about what a bad thing that is and how it sends the wrong message and how that's what is causing all of this cub petting and people to be paying to pet these cubs and how those end up in private hands. And then that becomes a smokescreen, a legal smokescreen for the illegal activities of poaching, which is causing the extinction of the tiger. So people in other countries know that America is the problem and they are happy to show that film. Places in America are not so happy to show that. Lawsuit claims construction company cut off bobcat's tail at a wildlife rescue. All you have to do is click on the headlines or the pictures of these and you can find out more about whatever that was. Bobcat with bob kittens spotted in a Nashville park. Bobcat spotted in the middle of South Haven suburbs. Protective gear for big cat rescuers. Representative Mace meets with badass Carole Baskin to promote a bill to address private ownership of big cats. So this was kind of funny because when Marty Irby was contacting the members of Congress and asking to set up a meeting for me to come in and talk with them or their staff, one of them leaked it to the press. And the press contacted me and they said, "Are you going to be there? And who are you going to talk to?" And I wasn't about to give the bad guys a heads up on what I was doing before I did it. So Marty, very cleverly, we were invited to Congresswoman Mace's home for Christmas holiday party that she was having. And while we were there, Marty said, we could really preempt this if you guys want to talk to each other about the Big Cat Public Safety Act. And I guess maybe I was in too much of a party spirit and wasn't really thinking about what I was saying, but I told her I thought she was such a badass because she is. She goes up against these people that they just want to keep the status quo, and there's all of this bickering between the parties and everybody being political, and she's just like, her attitude seems to be, if it's the right thing to do, I'm going to do it, and I don't care who's happy or not happy about it. And I love that. I absolutely love it when people are strong and they stick to their convictions. So I said she was a badass, and then she called me a badass, and then Marty thought, this is going to really go viral. So he tagged all of the big political newspapers, Politico and The Hill and all of those guys, and sent it out. And sure enough, it got picked up by media outlets everywhere. So that was great. It was a great way to preempt the leak that came out and talk about what we wanted to talk about, which was the Big Cat Public Safety Act, and not just give our opponents a way to oppose us. Colorado bobcat hunts for its next meal. Sounds like somebody got to be released to the wild, and it says the bobcat is stalking its next meal on a camera trap. Missing leopard captured, rescued safely by forest officials. Ooh, looks like they had a flood there. Speaking of floods, I saw the Kentucky devastation from those tornadoes, and my heart goes out to everybody in Kentucky. I've reached out to the members from Kentucky that I talked to and offered my condolences. Thankfully, Kentucky only has 2 USDA facilities that have wild animals, and neither of them have big cats. So thankfully, there aren't any big cats running loose, but it is the ultimate example of why we should not have big cats in cages. When you see that kind of devastation, there's no tiger cage that's going to survive that. You're going to have those animals running all over the place. We need to just stop it. Just stop breeding wild animals for life in cages. Speaking of banning things, the South Africans are really stepping it up, and they are banning the commercial trade of big cats in South Africa. There's a video from Tiger King villain and near-death cub now walks and plays. So if you remember the cub that started so much of this, it was a cub who was having its ears eaten off by flies due to the filthy conditions at the GW Zoo. That got so many wheels rolling in the right direction. I'm probably mixing metaphors here, but you get what I'm saying. It was what we needed to finally put an end to so much of the abuse. And I'm thankful that all of this attention has now led to an indictment of Doc Antle and his daughters, and Tawny and Tillicum, I think. I'm not sure. I'm sure about Tawny, not sure about Tillicum, who were also indicted on animal trafficking and wildlife abuse charges in Virginia. So I'm hoping at their hearing in June that it will finally be the end of that whole era and they won't be breeding big cats for life in cages anymore. In fact, if you haven't seen it yet, Tiger King on Friday, the 10th, just released a 3-part series called Tiger King, the Doc Antle story. And I don't care about his personal relationships, but I did find it interesting that he and I don't even know what to call him, Don Lewis, seem to have had the same predilection for little girls. And that was kind of gross, and it kind of makes me wonder about that entire industry. It seems like that's a very common thing in that industry for men to use the lure of big cats in order to get into the pants of little girls who aren't even of legal age yet. And so there was an awful lot of that going on. But the one thing that I was really curious about, and they never touched on it that I could tell, I watched it and I was really tired when I did because it was right when I got back from DC. They never talked about Antle's second wife. And his second wife was the mother to Tawny and Cody. And the only thing I've ever been able to find out about this woman, and her name was Dawn Marie Thurston. And she died, it says, in a car accident on August the 13th of 1997. And then Don Lewis disappeared on August the 18th of 1997. And given the fact that Don and Antle had to have known each other, and that was another thing that I thought was interesting in that 3-part series, is it tied Doc Antle to Mario Tepero and the whole drug industry again. And it also brought in Carl Mitchell, who I did not know was tied to those guys. He said that he was not involved in the drugs that they were involved in, but who knows? Carl Mitchell is not somebody that I would believe anything that he said. So I don't know. But nonetheless, given the fact that all of these guys were hanging out with each other back in the 90s, and I suspect that Don was hanging out with them as well, and the predilections that Don and Antle both had for these young women, and the fact that, I mean, what are the chances that Don would disappear just 5 days after this wife of his supposedly dies in a car wreck? And there is like nothing that I can find online that says anything about that other than that she died in a car wreck. That's it. There's like nobody has said anything about the details of that, and it makes me wonder. For years we thought that Don Lewis was dead, and then in Tiger King 2, Homeland Security produces a document saying he was alive and well in Costa Rica 5 years after I saw him last. So if that's true of him, then where is this Dawn Marie Thurston? Is she really the victim of a car accident, or was there something there? And the fact that they didn't talk about it at all in a 3-hour piece on Antle, it was like, how could you just pretend this person doesn't exist? You got their kids right there in TV in front of you, and they talk about the one wife who was the mother of Tillicum, but not Dawn Marie. How could that be? So it really caused more questions for me than it answered. And there have been so many rumors over the years, and this is all they have been so far that I know, is rumors that Doc would incinerate these cubs when they couldn't be used any longer. Well, why hasn't anybody talked more about that incinerator? If that thing actually existed, or people knew that it existed, you'd think that they would have been talking about it. And yet he has so many cubs every year for these cub petting displays, and then they seem to just up and disappear. I don't see evidence of them showing up anywhere. So where are those cubs going, and why isn't USDA looking into that? That's sketchy, I think. And then recently there were images that surfaced of a liger being butchered in that barn where these big cats live. These big cats at Doc Antle's place do not live in that big showy garden area where the public sees. They live in this barn in the back, and I've only seen one photo from that barn, and yet nobody seems to be able to get in there to see what that's like. But I've talked to people who were there, a couple of actually several people, who have said, yeah, that's definitely the inside of that barn. And this big liger was being butchered on the floor. And I'm being told that that was Hercules, the liger that he would show off with so much that was over 1,000 pounds. And so I don't see Hercules, even though he still advertises Hercules on his website, and it says you can come and pose with the cat. There's when you click on it, it doesn't go anywhere. So it makes me wonder what the situation is there. And again, why, if you're going to spend 3 hours on this guy, why didn't you talk about that? I did find it fun that all of his wives said he was a high school dropout. He was no doctor of any kind. He just made stuff up and called himself a doctor. And they had some clips of him talking about his necropsies that he does and all of his doctor work. And it was like, no. I've always believed that that was a lie, but it seems like from what his wives are all saying and people who were with him and close to him, that it was definitely not a doctor, only in his own head. And then they made a lot of ado about somebody that died there, and yet what bothered me about that was somebody said, oh, he jumped from a tree and that's how he fell from the waterfall and that's how he died. And then they asked him if he saw it and he was like, no, somebody else saw it. Well, who was that person and why haven't they come forward to say what they know about that? I want to know more about that too. And then, the rest I think was pretty much hearsay. So I don't believe what people say unless they've got the receipts and the evidence. And that's what I was really hoping to see in the Doc Antle story. And so there's still a whole bunch of questions there. Back to the news. Shocking new footage reveals horrific conditions that lions and tigers are subjected to at big cat farms in South Africa. Yeah, we've been saying that for decades. And finally, the press is showing this horrible situation. Can you spot these bobcats photographed in a Wisconsin forest? Just looking at it, barely. I see one cat walking on the ice, but it says that it's plural. Kirshner leopard handling continues after attack calls for a crackdown. A leopard attack at the Barry R. Kirshner Wildlife Foundation hasn't stopped the roadside zoo from allowing employees to directly handle a big leopard. That's what it says, a big A leopard. Sounds like a big ass leopard. I don't know. I think that might be a typo, but PETA's on the case. Spain approves a new law recognizing animals as sentient beings. How cool is that? Yeah. Hunters finally face a total ban on bringing home vile trophy kills. I love that the press is finally calling it what it is. It's vile that people go out and kill animals for fun. That is so despicable. Absolutely despicable. USDA announces requirement for contingency plans to protect animals during emergencies. Yeah, well, they can require all the plans they want. Implementing them is the real problem, and that's why these animals shouldn't be in cages to begin with. Here's why you may be seeing more mountain lions in Santa Rosa. And it says that young mountain lions sometimes resort to suboptimal habitats, such as residential areas, to survive. And then researchers working to save endangered ocelots. That's very cool. Love those ocelots. And then mother rescues young son from the jaws of a leopard. That tells you how much mothers love their children. I have a couple of coordinator reports for you because I've been gone a long time and I won't be able to catch up all of them. But the first one is from Lauren Grant on December 10th. And she says, we had a great day today. Afton started the day with AM meds. Sarah C. and Bridget joined us for feeding and cleaning today. Robin, Bridget, and I fed little cats, while Sarah, Nisha, Kat, and Emma fed bigs. Sarah, Emma, Robin, and I cleaned big cats. Nisha, Kat, Bridget, and Misty cleaned little cats. During cleaning, Jordan did food prep. Emma, Kat, and Nisha helped finish up and do meat inventory. Sarah and Bridget handed out the daily sickles and enrichment. After lunch, Sarah and I were able to work with our operant cats. The interns finished cleaning Running Bear's enclosure, then cleaned the front bubble of Loki the Savannah cat's enclosure. The interns were able to spend some time with the cats, handing out enrichment before the end of the day. Jordan finished the day with PM meds. Thank you everyone for your hard work today. Some cute pictures of, who is this? This looks like Jasmine on her back and Jinx and his cute paws. Jordan Elaine, also on December 10th, wrote another great Thursday in the books. Marie started the day doing AM meds and supplements. Lockouts were done by Nisha, Fred, Mark, and Barbara. Small cat feeders were Fred and Nisha cleaning the front littles, while Robin and Barbara fed center little cats. Big cat feeders were Mark and Emma feeding the lakeside big cats, while Cat and Marie fed interior big cats. Small cat cleaners were Fred and Susan cleaning the front little area, while Robin and Misty cleaned the center little cats. The big cat cleaners were Emma and Nisha cleaning lakeside big cats, while Barbara and Marie cleaned the interior big cats. While everyone was cleaning, Cat worked on food prep and then took care of the rehab bobcats, and Afton and I helped hand out Christmas trees to the big cats. Mark helped Victor build the new platform out in vacation rotation, which Aria is enjoying. Before lunch, Barbara, Marie, and Susan took care of the daily enrichment cats and popsicle cats. That would be bloodsicle cats. For those who don't know us, Robin and Misty deep cleaned the rat cages. After everyone got some cat time, Misty and Robin finished food prep while the rest of the interns worked on the back session of running Bear the Bobcat's enclosure. Cat finished the day with PM meds and interns doing chores. Thank you everyone who came in today. This has been a long one, but hopefully we are caught up on everything. I really hope we've caught up on everything, and I will try to get back to doing these big cat briefings every day. Meanwhile, join us on social media. Help us make the call of the wild at bigcatact.com. Mwah!